Welcome back to the Urban Monk. Dr. Pedram Shojai hanging out in studio, Southern California. We are almost done with this movie, and by almost done, I mean it's still going. There's so much going on trying to get a movie, sitting on an egg and trying to hatch it. And I promise it'll be beautiful. There are a lot. We have a trailer coming. By the time you hear this, the trailer might be out. So the trailer's coming out very soon. And there's just been some really unexpected things that have happened during the making of the movie, i.e. big stories in the movie changing, like Whole Foods being purchased by Amazon and now Rodale Publishing being up for sale. And so a lot of things that I have to adjust for as we get into, putting out a thing that then, is out there in the universe. So stand by for more on that. I wanted to bring one of my favorite people from the film onto this show so that we can kind of break out into some dialogue and talk about what's really going on. His name is Andrew Winston, the author of The Big Pivot, Finding the Golden Green, which is, he's been working with a lot of these very big companies, like biggest name brands in the world, really helping them find ways to be more sustainable and kind of align themselves with, climate change goals and all the good things that the good people in the world would want, because we'd like to live here still. And so I want him to share some of his insights there, and also just some of the current events that are happening, and just kind of poke around at what may or may not be the benefit of this Amazon acquisition, if it's all good, if it's all bad or something, and just what's happening in the industry. So without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see your face again. Last time we hung out, we were in New York. Yeah.
And doing the film, and you're almost done, you say.
Yeah, man. It's like, the old Orson Welles thing, right? It's like, it's always, you just got to abandon it at a certain point. Like, you could tweak and tweak and tweak. I was on a Skype call with the team today. One guy's in New York, one guy's in Africa. And, so one, the guy in New York was starting to get a little ticky-tack on things, and the guy in Africa is like, look, if it ain't broke, we got to move on, right? And it's just,
right.
It's how that works.
It's what they say in Silicon Valley, you got to ship it, right?
You got to ship it, yeah.
At some point. Yeah. No,
yeah.
I write regularly, and at some point you're like, I could keep editing, but you got to put it out.
Just hit publish. Yeah, that's it. And like some things are iterative. Films are kind of done, right? So you just do it. So man, there is so much going on right now, from fake news to climate change deniers taking over the EPA and all sorts of things that have kind of been incredibly regressive, in my opinion, for people who want to live on this planet. And so we are now in a point where this conversation that we're having with the movie is kind of a market-driven conversation, right? It's economic democracy. It's really aligning yourself with the companies that share your values to kind of get more of that. But then there's just been this tremendous policy shift, right? There's been a lot of movement there. So in your work, first of all, you're consulting still actively with a lot of these companies. What has any of that changed because of the national discourse with the companies you work with?
Well, I mean, there's been a kind of amazing shift, I think, in the last, obviously, 6-8 months in the country on policy. I mean, we have to keep in mind that the U.S. is not the only country, right? So there's a deep shift here, but the big companies are multinational, and they're dealing with issues all over the world. So it isn't just the Trump phenomenon. There's Brexit. There's pressures in India. There's lots of different places in the world where the pressure on companies a kind of quick changing policy environment is something they're trying to get a handle on. And what I've seen happen over the last 4 or 5 months is I think we're in this kind of amazing time of a rising expectation of companies and their role in society. I've been working in corporate sustainability for many years, and it's mainly been about, kind of control your footprint, maybe innovate, create new products, help the world shrink its footprint. And now there's kind of this pressure to kind of put yourself out there as a company and have opinions on issues they didn't used to speak out publicly. So you have companies speaking out on LGBT issues, on the immigration ban, filing legal briefs, right? The big tech companies, right after the first iteration of the ban, filed legal briefs. This is kind of new. Like, we haven't seen companies step forward in this way. I think it's great, but it is putting them on the hot seat. And I think my take is in talking to companies and executives is they're kind of in a rock and a hard place. Do you go against the agenda of the president of the United States and and the feelings of a bunch of your employees and some of your customers, or do you take a stand on an issue that's really important to other parts of your stakeholder base? It's a really challenging time.
Yeah, and if you're gonna fly a flag, that means something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to stay neutral in times like these, though.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Especially when the overwhelming consumer sentiment is towards moving in a direction that might be more sustainable, right? And so that's the part. I mean. I'm in a bubble, right? Everyone I know, gets this and obviously wants this. And then there's, the reality of, a lot of people who, don't believe dinosaurs existed. And there's a lot of that. So how do you get people to come back to alignment with kind of voting for their best interest and purchasing for their best interest is kind of, our challenge today.
Look, if I had the answer to that, I don't know. I'd be doing something else, I suppose. I mean, the answer of how do you get people to kind of vote with their own interests is, I think, one of the challenges of modern America, right? Is we have millions of people arguably voting against their interests in a really profound way, right? Voting for people that will take away their health care, voting for people that will ease up on, air and water, pollution restrictions that are keeping them healthy, that are keeping their water safe and keeping their air breathable for them and their kids. And yet they've millions of people have been convinced that the EPA is a bad thing, right? The Environmental Protection Agency, that somehow tackling climate change is horrible and is putting the country at a disadvantage with the rest of the world, when it's really the opposite. We are going to fall way behind on the race to the clean economy if we're not committed to moving to a non-carbon economy. So but again, kind of back to your first question, I think companies are just continuing on for the most part. What happened after the president removed the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord, or signaled intention to, because it takes years. The reaction was so quick, right, from states, from cities, and from hundreds of really large companies that said, we're going to continue. We're still going to cut our carbon as much as the country has agreed to. That was incredibly optimistic for me. I think there's lots to be pessimistic about right now, and I'm incredibly worried about our democracy, about the role of media, about all of the kind of mega trends that keep companies moving and whether it's going to be going in the right direction. Worried about all that, but this was a really positive sign. Companies stepping up and saying, we're going to do it anyways. So that was really nice, and it's still growing.
Yeah, it's almost like it's become a multinodal power structure, and so that kind of top-down pyramid hierarchy is starting to collapse. And I look, I've seen some very positive things from the judiciary, right? Like the judiciary is basically stepping up and being like, no, that's against the law.
Right. For now, until it gets to the Supreme Court, where the Republicans got their way. They got a seat that they shouldn't have, and they've got a very conservative justice. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think the checks and balances in the U.S. are not checking and balancing very well right now.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous time. But companies have a lot of power, and they can influence the way the world moves, hopefully in a good way.
Well, so I distinctly remember that when Obama won his presidency, there was a lot of people in the conservative circles that were like, "I'm leaving. It's over. This country has gone to shit." And things kind of moved on and did what they did. And now I have a bunch of liberal friends who are like, now that it's over. So the country seems to move forward, and it takes these kind of big swings of the pendulum. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, the tax base comes from businesses. The tax base comes from people spending money and allocating money. And frankly, those are the guys that are buying the lobbyists that are buying the politicians in, right?
Yeah.
So how do we use our leverage as a consumer to start to shift the sentiment out there? How do we let these companies know this is what we care about and this is what we ask you care about if you want our support?
Well, look, I mean, the answer in part is in the way, the question that, we vote every day in all the purchases we make. That said, it's not easy to know a lot of the time whether you're making a more sustainable choice, right? It's complicated. Like life cycle analyses of products are not easy. Is cage-free chicken a better footprint than grass-fed beef versus not eating meat? I mean, these are really hard questions. And, I think broadly speaking, you can try to support companies that seem to be doing the right things, that are, rated well. But it's even hard to understand if you're in the field, if you really look at companies very closely. So I actually think the real leverage for people may come as employees, as working for companies, working of all sizes. That's where I see, leaders of companies kind of feeling the pressure is from within, that people, especially millennials, want to come in and work for a company that stands for something, that has values, that meets their values. And I think that moves companies almost more than the consumers right now. I mean, yeah, if consumers move their dollars aggressively, it would matter, but they don't really, and they haven't quite yet. And again, I think part of it is not knowing exactly what the right choice is.
Well, I don't even know what the right news is anymore, right? And that's the problem is, every reality has come under question. So,
That's right.
you say this and that's fake news. I'm sorry, right? And
well, yeah, we could talk about, fake news has been warped, purposely warped, in a very Orwellian way. It had for like a week or two, it had a real meaning, right? It was efforts by Russians and others to create stories that were completely made up to influence the way people think. And then, the president and others started just calling any opinion they didn't like, or just news outlets they thought were not positive enough for them, they started calling it fake news. So we've basically taken those words and, they've made them meaningless now, which is part of the point, right? That's what you do, is you confuse people. So now I know many people just say, well, I don't know what to believe. I can't trust anybody. And I that's an incredibly sorry state of affairs, because it's, there are definitely sources of quote news that are mostly lying to people, but the mainstream guys, that's not them. It's a very strange world if you start to believe that something like the New York Times is lying to you all the time. It's it's like tinfoil hat kind of stuff. Like, I think the Wall Street Journal's conservative. I think they're pro-business. I think their op-ed page is horrible on things like climate change, but I don't think their reporting is lying. It's a strange state of affairs we're in now, and a very dangerous one. If you don't know fact, if you don't know what you're looking at is true, how do you make a decision in the world? How do you know what you're doing with your dollars, with your vote, with your time? It's incredibly unnerving, right? It's an unnerving way to live if you're like, I can't trust anything. It makes me sad for people who say that. It's scary.
Yeah. Well, this happened not too long ago in human history, where, a new religion took over the Roman Empire and they just started the calendar over and said,
Oh, you mean the Christianity?
Yeah, you just started the calendar over, right? And so it's just like, hey, everything before this didn't matter, and now what I say goes, right? And so it's a very Orwellian play that I think has been played out. It's just the technology really enables it. But
Actually, did you see the latest Louis C.K. routine? The comedian, he does this bit about, and it was on the net. They released it on Netflix about the calendar, right? Yeah. And it was such a funny, interesting take on it, that no matter who you are, Jewish, Muslim, whatever, you all say that it's 2017, which is 2017 in the year of our Lord, right? And it's not even the right date, right? It's not even, historically from when Jesus was born. It was like when the date was picked. It shows the power of the Christian worldview. It's an amazing kind of metaphor.
Yeah, and it's a battle for the narrative. And his joke was, I'm sorry, Christians won, folks. Like scoreboard. Who I'll tell you what day it is. And that's actually a really funny bit. I've never really been a big fan of Louis C.K. I saw that one, I was like, okay, he's funny. Yeah, he's funny.
He's very smart. He's a smart observer.
Yep.
You kind of he watches the world like most smart comedians do. So he finds humor in the dark places.
Man, so we mentioned this, and without spoiling anything in the film, there's this whole bit about how climate change is not really being denied in any sphere other than the American political sphere. Across the world, there's no debate about climate change, and even in the business community, there's no business. So let's just talk about the reality of this here, because it's an important piece about distortion of news.
Right. Yeah, look, climate denial has really climbed back into the front of the news in recent months, and I've written a bunch of pieces about that. I normally work with companies on strategy, and I write about what companies are doing and their strategies and how they're moving to renewables and what have you. But I've been writing more about climate denial and the phenomenon of it, in part because it's taken on this attitude, especially in the mainstream kind of press, the free press, that they have to kind of show both sides of the debate still. So the New York Times hired this, op-ed guy, Bret Stephens, a few months ago from the Wall Street Journal, and his first op-ed was basically about climate. And it was really interesting because, yes, there are the people like, I guess, the EPA head and the Secretary of Energy and others who still seem to doubt whether the science has any validity at all. That group's getting smaller and smaller. What's taken over kind of mainstream conservative thought in the U.S. is this denial that we know enough to do anything, or denial of action. And I wrote this piece on Medium that was one of the most kind of read things I've written, that just said, there's two kinds of denial. There's denying the science, and then there's denying that we should do something about it. And Bret Stephens at now the New York Times, he basically said, well, of course it's warming and there's evidence it's humans, but we can't be too certain. And I think this is in some ways a more dangerous denial because it just puts off action, and we have no more time. Because I think what they keep saying is, well, you're saying that you're absolutely certain of the science. No scientist says they know exactly how things will play out. That's not how science works. What I am 100% sure about is that we now know enough that the risk profile means we should do something, that we should reduce carbon because the risks are really high. And by the way, we now know that the payoff of reducing carbon is better than not doing it. Like, it's actually more profitable. So, of course we should do it. So, I've been writing more about that lately. Why do I believe in climate change? Here's the science. But it doesn't matter. The risk and reward equation says do something about carbon. And it's a globally, competitive market now to build the clean economy. This is the market of the future and the present.
Tease that out. Tease that out for me. Why is that more profitable? Help me understand the.
Well, I mean, there's a couple different dimensions of it. There's just the fact that reducing, your carbon footprint basically means reducing energy, reducing waste, and that just saves money. That's kind of basic, efficiency, eco-efficiency, or just lean, Six Sigma, whatever phrase you want to use about business leaning, that saves money. At the kind of macro level for the economy, there's building out all of the technologies and services related to the clean economy. So there's a group called the Advanced Energy Economy organization, and they're an NGO. They put out stats and data, and they've been kind of pushing the data that shows that there's now more people in the U.S. working in solar than in coal by a lot now. I mean, we now have more and more people working. So from a macro kind of American level, you've got this mad race now to build out multi-trillion-dollar markets. I mean, the energy business is the biggest sector in the world, and we're revamping it. Right, the next biggest is transportation, and we're moving to electric vehicles. I don't know if you saw, Volvo just announced that as of 2019, all their new models will have an electric engine. Maybe could be hybrids, but we'll have an electric engine. Like, that's a signal, right? That the first major auto company has now said there's no going back. Yep. So we're talking about shifting many trillions of dollars from oil and gas and combustion engines and kind of old inefficient buildings to clean energy, electric and hybrid vehicles, buildings with much better controls and insulation and windows, and these are all huge businesses. So this is a race that we now have an administration that says we don't want to race, we don't want to be in the race. It's we're going to let China and others build out these new industries, and it's a shame, right? This would be like saying 20 years ago, we're not interested in this internet thing, right? And look where the world is. We are no longer the dominant economy, but in the internet, in the newest stuff, all the biggest, besides Alibaba and a few in China, right? You've got the big five are here. Mm-hmm. They're U.S. companies, started mainly by immigrants, by the way, on another topic. Yep. But are we going to be that for the clean economy? It doesn't look like it. China now has the biggest makers of solar and wind.
Oh yeah, and they're crushing us. So I think I remember right after. The Paris Accord, was it the French president said basically he did like this like op-ed to Americans basically saying, come over here, we want you.
It was kind of brilliant. Yeah, he posted a video. There was one in French and they did one in English that just said, hey, scientists and business people and whatever, come here. Yeah. We believe and we think this is going to be the next big wave, and we want to build it. I mean, look, if you were a scientist or a developer of new clean technologies, where would you go now, right? I mean, if you're coming here getting your engineering degree or working on a new business plan, and you're coming from India or China, you're getting your degree. Are you going to stay here anymore? I don't know. It's like it's not going to be that supported by the government. Maybe the private sector will keep spending, but you need both, right? Yeah. China's spending committed to $350 billion between now and 2020, and that's not all private money, right? That's government. That's a lot of government money. So it's a shame. We are like giving up on the kind of fastest growing, biggest part of the global economy, and it's we don't have to do this. We can lead.
It's funny, as I was in New York not too long ago, and I was sitting, stuck in traffic on one of the bridges, and I'm just like looking out my window, looking at just this rusty old rickety bridge that used to be kind of the, just the hallmark of American civilization, and I'm looking at just kind of like some of the dilapidated parts of New York. And then, my friend had just gotten back from Singapore, and, I was just hearing about all the new development in Asia and all this. It's like, as Americans, we don't quite see the fact that we've been lapped already, and that, this is our last chance to kind of, stay in a leading position, or we're just going to get like leapfrogged pretty hard.
Well, we've substituted chanting "we're number one" for actually doing the work of being number one, right?
Totally.
And that's kind of been a dangerous development over the last generation. Is we just keep saying, and if you say something like, "Hey, we need to improve on this," or "We're not number one," or "Here's the statistics," you're called unpatriotic, right? Or un-American. Like you're supposed to just say we're the best no matter what. And infrastructure in particular is something I just can't believe that we now have let lapse, and that we have debates about. That used to be completely bipartisan. I once, did some research on this. Eisenhower signed the roads bill in the 50s, and it was, it's still talked about as one of his big achievements that built out the first kind of national continental road system. But he signed a bill that was basically unanimous in the Congress. There was like one senator and a couple people in the House that voted against it. I mean, can you imagine that today? Anything, any bill of substance, and it was an expense of a couple $100 billion in today's dollars. And we need to do it again. We need a new grid, a new electric grid. We need a much better one to transport energy further without losing too much of it, so we could have big wind farms like in the middle of the country and send out energy around the country. And we don't want to spend on stuff anymore. It's people don't want to pay the taxes that go to infrastructure. It's just not sexy. Even though it creates jobs, it certainly creates jobs, and I don't know why. I mean, look, I don't know why we can't get there anymore. Everyone just wants the smallest tax bill possible, and then still wants all the services. It's just we've kind of lost our logic, in connecting why we pay taxes, right? It isn't just to give some the man money. It's like to support actual things. So I don't know how we get back to that.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, if you think about it, Putin probably embedded these memes and is laughing right now. The demise of the Western world is a lot of this stuff built into the belief systems of the people who live here is now starting to cause the demise of a country that used to be the strongest and used to stand for lots of things that people would immigrate for and to. And I know a lot of people. This is a brain drain. I know a lot of people that are leaving America because of all this. And so it's scary. It's a moment of reflection and inflection, right? I mean, I get the world is becoming global economy and you can live anywhere and all this kind of stuff. But there's something great about this country and the freedom and the Constitution and all the things that it stands for and has stood for that are at risk of being compromised. And the same people that are voting for Trump and fighting for Trump want that same thing. They've just been duped into thinking that that's the solution. And so when you get Rex Tillerson,
or that we can get it for free, or that we can get it without any expense, or that there's just so much waste in government that's all we need to do is cut waste. I mean, there's kind of a big lie going on that we can do all these things and keep a safety net and keep Medicare and Medicaid and a strong defense and good roads and not have and pay less. I mean, it's just there's kind of a and actually I'm not sure this one was really Rush at all. I think we kind of did this to ourselves. I mean, this goes back to kind of the neoliberal economic order. This whole idea of kind of trickle down is part of the same idea. If we just keep cutting taxes, we'll grow and we'll make up for it and we'll get more money. And it's just been disproven. I have nothing against a theory if it works, but it just does not work. And it hasn't worked repeatedly. Look what's going on in Kansas, right? The guy Brownback just cut taxes, and now there's his own legislature of his own party is reversing it and saying, no, we actually need to raise some money so we can support schools.
Turns out we need money.
Yeah, we need money, and I'm not saying of course there's waste. Of course, it's a bit big organizations, but there's just been this big lie that there's just tremendous waste, and that the government's just trying to spend money to spend money, and people don't really understand where the budget goes. How much is really Medicare and Medicaid and defense and Social Security? Those four are like 80-90%. I mean, it's like the vast majority, right? There isn't all this spending that we can cut in everything else. Right. And we're going to find out, right? These guys want to cut the EPA back to the bone. And we'll see the repressions.
It's all fun and games until your kid gets cancer, That's
right. So you can't breathe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at, I just can't, this amazing thing about the last 6 months is there are things that I thought we weren't questioning anymore, like a commitment to clean air and water. That we're now questioning again. There are things that I thought we settled decades ago, and it's kind of bizarre. It's like everything's on the table again, and maybe there's a silver lining. Sometimes when you have a reset, maybe you can, maybe instead of Obamacare, we'll end up with single payer. We'll end up with, like every other developed country in the world, some support for healthcare for everybody. Right. Who knows? Maybe we'll swing back another way. I'm not sure. And I think actually back to our topic of prosperity and corporate sustainability, companies have to fill the gap more now, and I think they may end up doing far more. They may end up moving faster because they have to, right? Because they can't count on the government to supply any kind of support in dollars, resources, policies, whatever. So they're going to do it themselves.
There's a couple companies in the movie. One is a startup called Thrive Market, which basically is kind of like a membership model to get organic at the same cost as conventional food delivered to your doorstep. And they're really working to close that gap because, according to them, 70% of people don't live within, an easy driving distance to a health food store. So just getting healthy food is not easy in America. You live in a metropolitan area, you take it for granted. And so they've, allowed for that. And then, Amazon just bought Whole Foods, right? And,
I know.
And so it's like, I can choose which one of these websites I click on. So now, the question really is, what are you about, right? Amazon has, pretty bad track record when it comes to taking care of their employees, just crushing, just bringing the margins, up by just crushing their cost basis down and all these types of things. And so it's like, do we really want to see more? Do we want more miserable people? With miserable jobs so that we can save 8 cents, or do we want to support a company that can, support people so our neighbors have money to buy stuff from our stores, right? And these are conversations that can happen here. Like, Trump has nothing to do with that.
That's right. No, that's why I think we're seeing more action at the local level on things on big challenges like climate. It's state, local, cities, mayors. Food is certainly, there's a huge movement on local. I mean, the Amazon Whole Foods thing is kind of fascinating, and Amazon has, in many ways, lagged its peers on sustainability, on things like clean energy, on supply chain pressure. But they also, in the last couple of years, have really hired up with some very, very good people that I know, a lot of them, to build out kind of their sustainability thinking. So there's definitely more commitment there now, which is a sign in a way that it's not acceptable, right? As for a company, I think again the employees probably are part of the pressure. It's just not acceptable to not do things like get renewable energy for your data centers. They were like kind of the last of the big tech companies to buy renewables, and they started doing it big in the last year. So they're catching up, and we'll see what they do with one of the premier kind of sustainable food brands. We'll see. It's an unusual move.
What's your take on the move? What are the pros? What are the cons? You don't seem don't seem too excited about it.
I'm not. I'm having trouble separating out kind of maybe a personal reaction from a strategy reaction. But I'm frankly, look, I'm a business guy. I work with companies. I want them to be successful. I do think though that there's something unhealthy about companies getting too big, right? We saw it with the banks, too big to fail, and they've gotten even bigger. I just, in a way, don't know why Amazon needs to own Whole Foods. I just feel like we still need a healthy amount of competition in the marketplace and lots of different owners and lots of different experiments. So, you need this balance, right? I do believe that the big guys can help bring about a thriving world because they have scale. right? When Walmart says to suppliers, hey, everyone should buy more renewable energy. Apple has been pushing their suppliers around the world to buy renewables. That matters, right? Because they have the scale. But at the same time, there's kind of a balance. And, Whole Foods was not a small player in the kind of more sustainable food world. So I don't know. I just, as a personal level, it just seems like too much consolidation in my mind. But we'll see. Maybe there's something Amazon can do to help them scale even bigger. I know they've said there's kind of an intent to bring down prices and make it more affordable. That would be great. But arguably, partly because of Whole Foods, my local Stop and Shop and Walmart and others have a lot of organic offerings now at cheaper prices. Like that already was happening, right? That's the market. So I'm not sure that we needed Amazon to buy them to accomplish that. So I'm lukewarm, clearly, and I'm skeptical about it. So we'll see what happens.
Well, one of the things I read John Mackey saying kind of in the aftermath of all this, and as it was going is, look, he really held the line for his employees. He wanted to make sure his people had the benefits and got paid well. He's really about his people. Like, this is a family. I started this in 1978. Yeah. We take care of our people. And so, if you're inside of that ecosystem, it's great, right? Like, hey, I'm getting paid better. I get a living wage. I get to not decide whether to go to the movies or, buy this thing. And so you have money, there's money circulating around the economy. But then when you're going up against people that don't care about that and are willing to, kind of crush their people and pay them less and kind of get more labor out of them, it creates an unfair playing field. And, the people who supported Whole Foods were the people who were the early adopters who wanted organics and were willing to pay more for it. So it's tough because, he kind of he was less competitive for the right reasons. And so is it just the way of capitalism to kind of crush all that and bring it down? Like, how do we set it up so everyone has a living wage, right?
Well, maybe we got to rethink capitalism a little bit. I mean, I'm not anti-capitalist at all. I think it's a very, it's a tool. It's a very efficient system, but that doesn't mean it optimizes for all the right things, right? I mean, it optimizes for matching kind of goods and services at the lowest possible price, and competition. It doesn't optimize for kind of a sustainable future, right? It kind of optimizes for the opposite, to use up common resources as fast as possible. So I think there's kind of a larger, profound, more profound conversation to be had about the role of business in society. What is a business? I think a lot of the problem is public companies versus family-owned or private or others that can kind of take a longer view. Because I think the question, we always, you get pushback in the sustainability world where if you talk about doing something that might take longer to pay off. Well, first of all, that happens in business all the time, in innovation and marketing. But when it's called sustainability, you're a hippie or something. But I do think there's a larger kind of philosophical question about, it isn't a choice between profit maximization at all costs, maximizing every day as much as possible, and going out of business. That's always the way it's kind of portrayed. People are like, well, we can't do something that might take a little longer to pay off because we can't go under. And it's like, and I'll be talking with a client who, maybe netted billions of dollars in the previous year. Like, they're not close to going out of business. And so the question is, could you have a discussion about like being profitable, but how profitable? I saw the clip from your from the movie where John Mackey says you need money, you need profits to survive. Well, of course, but do you always need the most right now? No matter what, because that leads you to kind of the private equity hedge fund, tear up assets and just squeeze as much as you can out. I don't know. Is that really what the point of a company is? I think a company's there to solve a problem for customers, to get a customer, to make their life better, to give them something they need at a profit. But does it have to be the most all the time? I don't know. I just think that's short-sighted.
Well, I mean, you alluded to something that I think is also part of kind of this whole unraveling of this Whole Foods story into the Amazon behemoth is, John Mackey was facing a lot of pressure from activist, quote unquote, investors who were basically like, yo, squeeze more blood out of this rock. And so, in that pressure, he took a check from the wrong guys in a lot of ways, because the pressure to then feed a parasitic, entity that constantly needs to extract more value out of what you're doing, basically put him in a position where, it created like all sorts of, board of directors issues and all this. So what about slower money? What about, like there's all these sustainable funds. I'm moving my money into sustainable funds. The returns are okay, but I know that I'm not destroying the planet. And
Right.
so, how do you see that playing into an ecosystem like this?
Well, I mean, look, there's been so many analyses of sustainably minded investment, and there's always basically the conclusion that some do better, some do worse. Which, I mean, I read another article the other day about, well, there's, it's not the sustainable minded companies don't consistently always do better, and it's like, well, if there was a sure thing in investing, there's no such thing. You can't go all technology companies do better than not. I mean, it depends, right? It depends on how well the company runs. But, Unilever, one of the leading lights of kind of large company sustainability, their stock's done incredibly well. As the CEO said recently, they've done better than Warren Buffett over the last 7 years. They've grown tremendously. I think there are people starting to think a little bit more about their money and slower money, right? And I think we do need to look at different ownership models. Again, it's not that all public companies need to be private, but there's parts of companies that will just, never have the kind of growth profile that the market wants, right? You can't have every company growing double digits. Like, that's just not mathematically possible. So there's pieces of business, kind of old, steady brands that maybe just need owners that just want long-term stability, like big institutional investors or pension funds, that they could own pieces of businesses just kind of to own the cash flows and just have a steady stream. I think we have to kind of figure out ways to change ownership, and there's people working on that, definitely. But it is a kind of big, it's a big leap. Most of the finance world and Wall Street works in kind of one model, which is tell us how fast you're going to grow. And that's why you see so much M&A these days, I think. You see it's a way to grow the top line. You just buy somebody. That's part of the Amazon story, right? They just need to keep showing growth.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they weren't showing any profits for years. I mean, almost like what, decade or so.
Oh, like most of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Bezos has done a kind of brilliant job of convincing investors they should wait, and that he's going to keep growing, and he's paid off handsomely so far. The stock kind of keeps going up year after year, but it's amazing that he's convinced them of that. So many others, most companies can't get away with that. Can't say there's no profits this year, but we're investing it and we're going to grow. At some point he has to produce steady profits. So it's hard to say what's going to come with this.
And then when he turns that corner, he'll probably face the same internal pressures that John Mackey did, right? Like he'll get to a point where people want their money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the problem with the activist investors. They're just kind of they're trying to turn a profit, and again, it's not like there's no purpose to that. And capitalism has its benefits, but I think it's gotten out of hand. It's gotten too extreme and lost kind of the sight of, the role of companies and what they do as providers of some good or service to people and employers, right? A big part of a company is giving thousands of people like some work to do, and often meaningful work, and helping them raise their families and have a life. That's a really critical role for business. So, I'm not anti-business, and I think there's too much anti-corporate in the sustainability, traditional kind of old school sustainability world. That's not helpful. Business is too big a part of the economy to just say we're going to create a world without them. But I do think we need to rethink some of the definitions here and kind of some of the purpose.
Yeah. But to your point, I mean, so if Amazon can no longer get away with, having terrible track record in carbon emissions and all these types of things, it means that people are watching, whether it's internal employees or customers, and, the gig will be up, especially with the internet, especially, the way things travel, news travels nowadays is, you just can't be a shithead anymore. And, companies get away with that, traditionally have gotten away with that. And now that is up, right? And information is traveling so quickly.
So fast.
Right. Maybe that's a really good way of us being able to keep an eye on them and leverage them and right to the CEOs.
No, the transparency it's I think the most powerful force of the kind of the mega trends that I study and work with companies on. I think the rise of transparency is perhaps the biggest one. And it's technology enabled as we get more and more data. It's social media enabled. I mean, I wrote an article a couple months ago about called "The Speed of Corporate Shame." It was the week that United, beat the crap out of a passenger to take him off, and Pepsi released an ad, with Kendall Jenner solving racial problems with a Pepsi. And it was, I thought they were really an interesting study in one company that was frankly well-meaning. I think Pepsi was trying to say we should all be together. It was kind of like Coke's Teach the World to Sing from years and years ago, but they just executed it poorly. And then there was United that just had a horrible policy of like, we can kick people off and then calling the cops. I mean, it was nuts, right? But the amazing part to me was that companies still don't quite have a handle on the fact that everyone is carrying a video camera with them, that everyone is a reporter and a customer and an agitator. I mean, I just can't believe how often this now happens, where you record something going wrong somewhere and the company still doesn't know how to handle it. You know, so I agree with you. I think this level of transparency generally will lead to much better behavior because you can't get away with anything anymore.
And maybe that's the solution to fake news. Is I don't think anyone called that fake news. I mean, it's it's clear as day. This is what happened, right? And if you have video footage of reality happening as we speak, it's kind of an interesting way of watching the world events. Yeah. So I mean, things are just changing.
The Facebook Live thing, right? People just start filming something. I mean, like the Castile shooting, where his girlfriend filmed it, right? I mean, filmed the police coming and talking. I mean, it still didn't result in a conviction, which is unbelievable. But like, there's almost everything's going to end up on film now. When you hear about anything happening now, don't you just expect, we're going to see a video of that? Mm-hmm. We're going to see it. It's kind of remarkable, and I think it will end up making companies kind of much more careful and smart about the things they do. We'll see. There's still going to be missteps.
So the book is called The Big Pivot, Radically Practical Strategies for a Hotter, Scarcer, More Open World. Man, you've been working with a lot of the biggest brands. I mean, you're modest, and so you've worked with the biggest of the big, and it's commendable. These guys are hiring you and saying, let's have this conversation, right? Yeah. This isn't, are they trying to greenwash, or are they listening to you?
No, look, like I said, there's people on the climate action and sustainability spectrum who are just, think all companies are full of it, and we need to kind of destroy the big company capitalist system. And I get where they're coming from, but just like the anti-government thing is kind of misplaced, all these organizations are just groups of people, right? I mean, there's a few kind of bad actors like the Koch brothers, or people that kind of just control their enterprises, and they've got pretty clear views of where they want the world to go. But most companies, especially big public companies, are just groups of people, and people generally want to do the right thing. They want their companies to do the right thing. I think there's just a lot less, ill intent than people think. There's a system with a narrative, as you said a narrative earlier. We have a story, that neoliberal story that says your job in a company is to maximize profits right now as much as possible, and that's the only purpose. And that story has kind of overtaken people, and it's made executives think that's their only goal, and that they can't do something that's maybe more creative, or something that helps the world in some way, even if it helps their business down the road, because maybe it'll cost some money right now. I mean, there's just so much of that where the story has really overtaken. So I think these companies mean it. There is really not a large company in the world anymore that's debating climate change. Back to our conversation earlier about the GOP in the U.S. being kind of the only pocket. Companies aren't really debating it. It's a matter of what do they do about it? How fast do they act? Some want to go a lot slower, and some really get it, and some see the kind of huge advantage in it, in selling more stuff that helps the world get there. And that's, those are the companies that are exciting, that see that the change, that helping build out the cleaner economy is good for them. Those are the ones that are going to kind of lead in the coming years. So I think they mostly mean it. It doesn't mean they deliver on it. There's a lot of gap from intention to action, but it's not from I think ill will or lying. There's just a lot of inertia in the system. It is hard to change.
Well, it's also public will. Like if you don't let the company, if you're giving them your money and not bitching about what they're doing wrong, and withholding your money, then really where's the incentives? You got to line up the incentives with your values.
The car companies have said for years, we'll make more energy efficient cars when people buy them. There's a chicken and egg kind of logic there. I mean, there's plenty in the world that companies have convinced people to want, like most products on some level, right? You don't need 50 different kinds of toothpaste or hundreds of different kinds, right? So there's a kind of give and take there, but there's some truth to it, right? If people only wanted Priuses and not Escalades, the car companies would just make the electric and the hybrids. But when gas prices come down, all of a sudden we all come out and buy big cars again. It's really short-sighted. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of I'm with you. I mean, we need to walk the walk as consumers.
Yep. So there's also a piece that we talked about in detail in the movie. The movie's called Prosperity, but there's just this gap. Everyone quotes this book by Adam Smith being kind of like the founder of modern capitalism, The Wealth of Nations, and most econ students never got through reading this book because it is thick and it talks about tariff deals with the Spaniards and the Dutch, and it's a thick, heavy read, but everyone quotes it because this guy was the man. And what they're missing is that he wrote this book first, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and he said that until you have your act grounded in morality, then all this other stuff means nothing. And I never heard about this book in college, right? And so there's a lot that's missing. There's a lot that's misquoted, and it's kind of. And then Milton Friedman took over, and there's a lot of conversations that have kind of taken us into a direction of, short-termism and shareholder primacy and all sorts of things that are ongoing themes in the Prosperity movie that we don't have time to talk about here. But this is the time of a renewal of thought. This is a time where we really have an opportunity to say, okay, we get to choose.
Right.
And what is our choice, right? We're not victims here. And so, it's an empowering time as far as I'm concerned. It's scary times usually are, right? But it's an important time to be able to, step up and find your voice.
Well, there's a lot more people who are, as the kids say, woke. Or as the Oxford English Dictionary, they just added woke to the dictionary, so I can now use that without feeling like I'm, trying to act young. Look, there's millions of people, right, that are just much more aware that they got to be thinking about their votes, that they got to be active, they got to be voting. I think that will be a good thing. I mean, you're right about these theories. I mean, that we got a lot of them wrong in a way, that we took the wrong. The Adam Smith was. Everyone thinks, invisible hand, meaning a market with zero moral guidance or any rules to guide the market. And as you said, that's not really what he said, right? It was like an invisible hand with a moral center. I mean, the other thing that we, made into kind of a business doctrine was Darwin, right? It was like survival of the fittest, when that's not exactly what he was saying either. His was about adaptation, right? Like evolving. It wasn't just, well, you eat the weaker. It was much more symbiotic than that, much more systemic and holistic. And that's what we're learning now is kind of the way the world works, right? It's much more connected. And that's happening, we're realizing that in biology and in science. We need to realize that in our society, that we are all connected. Yep. And that that's not a kumbaya socialist manifesto. It's just reality, right? What you do affects me and vice versa. It's a crowded world. So we kind of need to work together.
Yep. Amen. Well, Andrew, it's always a pleasure. We're out of time, and man, there's so many places we can keep going here. Keep up the good work, and I'm gonna kind of keep you on my speed dial as more of our sustainable companies get acquired, or things start shuffling. There's it's just an interesting time, and I think all things further, we just got to keep our eye on it and keep moving things forward.
Absolutely. Good luck with the film. I'm excited to see it.
Yep, it'll come out soon. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time. Let me know what you think in the chat threads.